Another of the portents of the end times foretold by our Prophet, peace be upon him, is the sinking down of the earth in 3 different locations. One of these will happen in the west, one in the east, and the last on the Arabian Peninsula. Our Prophet, peace be upon him, says in that hadith, "The last hour will not come until you see 10 signs, landslides with a sinking down, caving in or displacement of the earth in 3 places, one in the east, one in the west, and one in Arabia." Let us now examine the 3 incidents of sinking in the east, west, and the Arabian Peninsula, in the light of some recent and highly significant developments. One of the portents of the last day foretold by our Prophet, peace be upon him, is a sinking in the east. The term sinking may be referring to the vanishing of a large area of land or human community, its disappearance from the face of the earth, and Allah knows the truth. The tsunami disaster that struck South Asia on December 26, 2004 bears a close resemblance to this portent described in the hadith. The sinking down in the east foretold by our Prophet, peace be upon him, may well therefore refer to that great tsunami disaster, and Allah knows the truth. Tsunami is the name given to the giant waves that form in the wake of earthquakes or submarine landslides. The damage caused by these giant waves has sometimes been recorded as approaching that caused by atom bombs. These high waves can sometimes bury coastal towns underwater. Throughout the course of history, various disasters, earthquakes and hurricanes have taken place in Asia and the Far East. Terrible destruction has been unleashed in these disasters and very large numbers of people have lost their lives. However, the tsunami in South Asia in 2004 that resulted in the deaths of more than 225,000 people was one of the largest of these disasters. The tsunami in question hit the shores of Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, Malaysia, Thailand, Bangladesh, Myanmar, the Maldives, and the Seychelles, and even Somalia, an African country 5,000 kilometers distant. This tsunami disaster that took place in the end times affected a huge area and caused towns to disappear under seawater and the mud and wreckage it carried with it, and thus changed the world map. For these reasons, the sinking down in the east in the hadith may well refer to the disaster in South Asia, and Allah knows the truth. This disaster, the effects of which are estimated to be felt for many years to come, ended in a wide region sinking below water as foretold by our Prophet, peace be upon him, in the hadith. Another portent of the last day foretold by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, refers to a sinking in the west. The terrible destruction wrought by Hurricane Katrina in the US Gulf of Mexico on August 29, 2005 brings to mind the sinking down in the west. This sinking that our Prophet, peace be upon him, said would happen in the end times would be expected to be far greater and have a far greater impact than similar events in the past. And indeed, the devastation wreaked by Hurricane Katrina was far greater than that caused by similar such phenomenon. Someone who witnessed the hurricane said,
"It's just something I never in my wildest dreams thought I would ever see or could ever happen. Who would have ever thought 100,000 people, would stay for a Category 5 hurricane? I guess the reason they stayed is, who would ever think the levees would fail?"
Terrible disasters have taken place on the continents of Europe and America throughout the course of history, but none has ever caused as much devastation as Katrina. Unlike other disasters, Katrina caused millions of people to migrate, cost the lives of tens of thousands, led to the devastation of 3 large states, and ended in whole towns remaining underwater. Therefore, the Katrina disaster, one of the worst in the history of the United States, may be one of the 3 incidents of sinking referred to by our Prophet, peace be upon him. Blowing at up to 260 kilometers an hour, Hurricane Katrina first struck the state of Florida. 13 people lost their lives in the state, and huge physical damage was suffered. The hurricane then turned toward the state of Louisiana. It caused huge damage to the coasts of Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi. More than 10,000 people are estimated to have lost their lives in these 3 states, which were made almost uninhabitable. The physical damage has been out at 100 billion. In the wake of the disaster, tens of thousands of people were unable to find enough to eat and drink. There was no clean water or food in the city. Some 5 million people were left without electricity in the wake of Katrina. It was announced that because of all the damage, it would take months to restore electricity supplies to the city as a whole. Hundreds of thousands of buildings were made uninhabitable, while hundreds of thousands more were badly damaged. The region affected by this national disaster is approximately 1/3 the size of Turkey. Electricity severages, cut telephone lines, and the fact that mobile phones and the internet no longer worked put a complete end to business life. It has been calculated that nearly 1 million jobs were lost in all sectors. Educational institutions in the region were closed. A great many schools were put out of use, while others suffered considerable material damage. While Hurricane Katrina caused terrible damage to several cities, New Orleans, the largest city in the state of Louisiana, was made uninhabitable. Some 80% of New Orleans, regarded as one of the main touristic and cultural centers of the USA, was left underwater. The height of the water in some districts exceeded 6 meters. Therefore, New Orleans literally disappeared by sinking under the water. In the same way that the sinking down in the east, foretold by our Prophet, peace be upon him, may refer to the tsunami disaster in Indonesia, the incident of the sinking down in the west may be a reference to the disappearance of the city of New Orleans. It is certain that Allah knows the truth. New Orleans has witnessed a great many storms and hurricanes. But the city that encounters a hurricane on average once every 14 years has never before seen one that has wreaked devastation and destruction on such an enormous scale. New Orleans literally disappeared for the first time by being engulfed by the waters. The way that this great city almost entirely disappeared also bears a very close resemblance to another portent of the end times, foretold by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It is revealed in the hadith that great cities will be ruined, and it will be as if they had not existed the day before. In addition to the incidents of the sinking down in the east and the west, the hadiths of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, also refer to a third incident on the Arabian Peninsula. This sinking due to take place on the Arabian Peninsula also bears a close resemblance to another hadith of our Prophet, peace be upon him. This hadith reads, "An army comes to fight. Once they enter the desert, those at the front and rear disappear, and the ones in the middle cannot save themselves either." During the Iraq War of 2003, a large part of the Iraqi army suddenly vanished. Reports concerning the disappearance of the Republican Guard, consisting of some 60,000 members, and another unit known as the Fedayeen, with some 50,000 Iraqi soldiers, appeared in many papers and on many TV channels. The fact that this is referred to in the hadith of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, shows that the disappearance of an army, one of the portents of the end times, might have taken place. The fact that in the days that followed, a number of warplanes were also found buried under the desert sands also reinforces the probability that the disappearance of an army in the desert refers to the disappearance of the Iraqi army, and Allah knows the truth. Considering this together with our Prophet's, peace be upon him, hadith about a sinking in Arabia, it would seem that the phenomena concerned may refer to this extraordinary state of affairs during the Iraq War, and Allah knows the truth.